Today on Art Matters with Mr. Morris.
Faces.
Art Matters with Mr. Morris.
Yeah. My artists, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking a little bit more about scale, but we're going to be talking about a subcategory of scale known as proportion. The reason why my face looks funny right now is, well, because it's out of proportion. In other words, my nose is much bigger. Now my eye is out of scale. It's out of proportion with the rest of my face. My mouth is out of proportion with the rest of my face. When we're learning to do portraits and make artwork, one of the reasons why sometimes things look all wibble wobbly and weird has to do directly with, are you using proportion the right way to keep things in scale? So you see, proportion directly links with scale. If things are in scale, then they may be in proportion. If they're in proportion, then they're in scale. Proportion is a part of scale. Scale is one of our
Principles of design.
Any consistent object can be used to measure something to see if it's in scale. It doesn't have to be a ruler or a yardstick or a meter stick. It literally can be anything as long as it's consistent. You might see an artist and what they do is they close one eye and they'll stick out their thumb or they'll stick out a pencil and you see them doing one of these numbers. What they're really doing is they're looking at something from their perspective, from where they're sitting or standing, and they're looking at it and they're measuring it with their pencil or their thumb. Then they take that measurement, their arms fully stretched out so their thumb doesn't change size, and then they can take it and compare it to something else, and something else, and something else. So by doing this, what they're really doing is they're using their thumb as a measurement device to see what the different sizes are of things to keep them in scale. One of the most important places that this comes into play is when we're drawing the human face. When you're drawing a face, it can be very different from any other face. At the same time, there are consistencies in the human face that we do know about. Today, I'm going to show you some different ways of drawing parts of the face. The reason why I'm showing this to you now is because our studio for this lesson is going to be drawing a face using what we call proportion, or the proportions of the human face. I'm only going to take you through eyes, nose, and mouth today, partially because those are the most important features when doing a portrait, but also because, well, I can't have a 4-hour-long video, can I? Whenever you see a complex shape, be it a nose or an eye or lips, when you see that, don't think of it as the thing that it is. Think of it instead as shapes. How do those shapes fit together? How can you simplify the face? While I'm doing my demo, you're going to see me using some pretty basic shapes, rectangles and trapezoids. Some of them have names and some don't. But you'll see how those shapes can fit together to form into, well, our face. Before I demonstrate how to draw these different facial features, I want you to keep in mind that when you're drawing a person's face head on, it is what we call foreshortened. An easy way to understand what foreshortened means is this. When I take my arm and I put it out like this, you can see the whole length of my arm. But as I turn my arm towards you, you no longer see my whole arm. Now your brain knows that there's a huge amount of information that's here, but it's being compressed because it's going into depth. So as you're looking at my arm, we call this foreshortened. My nose is foreshortened when you're looking at it right now. You may remember from an earlier lesson where I talked about when people draw the Dorito nose or the football noses where it's like the nose and it's little triangular shape. The reason why we do that is because our brain knows that from this angle, not foreshortened, our noses are all roughly about the same. They're kind of this Dorito shape. But when I turn my nose towards you, it's foreshortened and our brain doesn't know how to draw that, how to depict a foreshortened object. And so instead it draws a triangle for the overall basic shape, or it draws the Dorito nose.
All right, my artists. Today we're going to go over the features of the face in a little bit more detail than we've done in the past. So we're not worrying about making a face, but we are worrying about how the individual parts of a face look, at least from a head-on perspective. Let's start up with the one facial feature that people avoid the most. Quite often you'll see noses and there'll be this kind of shape, or there'll be a triangle, or there's the dreaded just two holes in your head. Or my personal most hated is the butt nose, where people draw their nose like this and then they put the holes into it. Oh my gosh, no one has a nose like this. So let's get past this today. So your nose essentially is simply a way for your body to get air. And to that end, it's got two long tubes. So if we imagine them as two straws. Now, to keep these straws from them touching, we're going to draw in a part called a septum. And what the septum is it's that little piece that goes between your nostrils. Now, in some cases, it hangs low. In some cases, it hangs in the middle. In rare cases, it hangs up higher up. But for the most part, our septum dips down a little bit below our nostril line. Then on the sides of my nose, I have what are called the flanges. And the flanges wrap around. Again, this is all to protect the nostril. This is to keep that straw from collapsing. From here, it wraps up and down, goes up and over, and those flanges kind of wrap up and over. We have the ball of the nose kind of on the front, and then we have the bridge of the nose that goes on up. So all in all, we have the flange of the nose, we have the septum of the nose, we have the nostrils, we have the ball of the nose, and last we have the bridge. Put all these together and you get a nose, and now you know something. Okay. The first thing that you should think of is the shape of the septum. So I have my septum drawn. Now I need to draw my nostrils. So my nostrils are going to curve the opposite direction, curve up. I don't want you to worry about trying to draw like your nose exactly, but I want you to make sure to pull up a mirror and look at your nose. Compare your septum to your nostrils. Which one's higher, which one's lower? Observational art starts with, well, observation. We're really looking to see how one part relates to another part, relates to another part. So we've drawn a septum, we've drawn our nostrils, and now we're going to curve around those nostrils with the flange of the nose. From here, I can go up. The bridge typically swings out, and then it swings in. Different people have different angles to the bridge of their nose. Some of them, their bridge may taper a little bit sooner. Some of them, it may flare out. Look for the details in your nose. From here, I can refine things, and I can start looking at the nose and saying, okay, can I see the ridge that goes underneath or around the nostril? Does it come up? Does it go over? What does it do? In some cases, this will be a very defined part on some people's noses, and for some people's noses, it won't be. As far as shading goes, well, shading's actually not as scary as it sounds. Think of it this way. Light is coming down, and light is probably coming over at an angle. So if I assume that I have light coming down, then I know that the bottom of my nose is going to be more in shadow. My nostrils are going to be a little bit darker than that. From here, I think about how light comes this way. Light is hitting one side of your face a little bit more than the other side of your face. So knowing that, I'm going to look for where I see that separation between light and dark on my nose. Quite often, it's going to be something along this line. It's going to come down the bridge about 50-50, but when it gets to the ball of the nose, it's going to swing one way or the other way. At this point, I can choose to keep on shading and increasing the contrast in my nose. A lot of time you'll get a highlight that'll happen on the bridge of the nose where it'll actually look a little bit shiny, but not on everyone's faces. Again, everyone's face is a little bit different. We all have a septum, we all have nostrils, we all have flanges, we all have a bridge to our nose, and we all have something resembling the ball of the nose. We all have that. That's universal. A smile. Well, here's the silly thing about a smile. We tend to learn to draw a smile this way, and in reality, our facial muscles do turn up when we smile. However, our actual mouth opening does not. So our mouth does not suddenly curl up. And here's a quick skull that I've drawn, and the mouth opening is going to be down here. And see, here's the thing. The mouth opening, this top section where your top teeth are, it doesn't move up. That's a fixed part of your skull. The muscles around it can pop up, which gives the illusion of this curve. But when we're smiling, the top doesn't really curl up much. You might see some curling happening towards the very edge of the mouth opening itself, but you're not going to see like the entire smile do this crazy thing. And if you look at the opening of your mouth, some people, there's going to be an indentation here. It's going to come downwards. Other people, there may not be as much of an indentation. Your mouth may literally be almost like a cartoon mouth where it's just straight across. There's no real divot there. But once you have the general idea of the shape of your mouth opening, from there, filling in the rest of your lips, that's actually fairly easy. The first thing I like to do is I like to see, first off, how far up is going to be the top of the colored part of my lips. And I'm going to, again, most of the time, you're going to see that this area right here, it's going to emulate this shape, and it's also going to be concave. Our lip typically comes up in this convex area, and then it's going to slope back in this concave area. Convex to concave. Our bottom lip works the same general way. I'm going to have one portion of my lip that's almost going to be a box. And this box, the bottom of it, typically is convex. But then the corners of it, they're going to become concave as they move back up towards the mouth opening. From here, you can fine-tune things. You can, for instance, draw in the node. This is the part of your mouth that does curl up, but it's a very small, very subtle part on most people's faces. As far as shading goes, again, think about your light source that's coming down, and it's usually coming a little bit at an angle. For that reason, I want to think about the bottom lip, and the bottom lip, part of it is going to be in shadow. I also want to think about the top lip. The bottom of the top lip, if that wasn't confusing sounding enough, is also going to be in shadow. The mouth opening, of course, is always going to be the darkest part of our lip. Then last, our light's coming this way. So this side of the lip will be illuminated, whereas this side will be more in shadow. This half here will be more illuminated, versus this whole half will be, again, more in shadow. And we're gonna have a separation line that comes right down the middle, just like on the nose. A couple other quick notes to make about lips. One, when we're drawing lips, you'll also notice on some people's lips, you're gonna see these lines. These lines kind of curl along the edge of the lip. Some people have those lines and they're very defined, some people don't. So pay attention to those, and pay attention to the fact that they're going to curl this way on this side, but on this side they're going to curl the opposite direction, because your lips are a three-dimensional form. Our lips are essentially these two long cylindrical forms that are close to us and move further away from us, that are more bunched up, that are getting thinner. That combination makes it so that the bottom of our lip curls upwards, and this is partially what gives us that original illusion of we smile like this.
Pause the video and draw 2 or more mouths.
And the white part of your eye is going to be called the sclera. The sclera is going to take up, from viewing head on, about 1/4 and 1/4. Together, about half of the width of the eye is going to be the sclera. So here we have our pupil, our iris, and our sclera. 1/4, half, 1/4. Now the pupil itself, well, it changes in size. I know that might sound crazy, but your pupil is what allows light to enter into your eye. Just like in how a camera shutter works, the darker it is, the larger your pupil becomes, because it's trying to open up and let more light in to give it more information. I draw an eyeball, and from there, I draw my iris. And then from there, I look at whoever I'm drawing from, and I look at the size of their pupil and the light that I'm currently in. I want to make sure 1/4, 1/4, 1/4, 1/4. Next thing I typically do is I'll make the tear duct. I'll pay attention to how that little shape is, with attention to make sure I'm curving that eyeball. From there, I'm going to wrap the eyelid around the person's eye. And I'm also going to look for any shapes that I might see in their eye that are highlights. The bottom eyelid I'm going to focus on. And again, I'm looking for the distance. How far is it from the bottom of the iris to the top of the bottom eyelid? The top eyelid always goes over top of the bottom eyelid. And then the eyelid itself is going to curve up. It might get cut off. It might do some weird things like this where it becomes convex, but it usually ends up being concave again towards the edge. Here, it's going to curl in and then back down. It's going to become convex again. I want to pay attention to the rest of the ocular socket, and I want to pay attention to where does the eyebrow start. So does my eyebrow start right above the tear duct? Does it start right above the sclera? Does it start right above the iris? Everyone's eyebrows are a little different, so pay attention to that. So when I do draw it in, again, I want to think about what angle is that main rectangle at? How does the edge of their eyebrow taper? Shading, for me, I always start with the pupil. So I start with it because I know it's the darkest part. I'm going to go through and I'm going to just darken in that area. I may not go as dark as I could go, but I want to make sure that I'm not cutting into that little highlight that I left in there. From here, the iris itself, typically we have one side of the iris. Again, think about our light source. Down and typically over. So my light is coming in this direction. In fact, my highlight is even showing that it's coming in from that direction. This side of the iris, believe it or not, is going to have a little bit of a shadow. And this side of the iris is going to have a little bit of a shadow, and the bottom ledge is going to have a little bit of a shadow. Even though the highlight might be there, there's still going to be shadow on the bottom ledge of that. I like to picture an iris is that it's like this half donut floating on the curve of your eyeball. You have eyelashes that are going to come up and out, down and up, maybe a couple on the bottom that you see, and my eyelid ends. I want to really accentuate that curve. I want to make sure that that looks curved. Now again, my light source is coming down and over, and so I'm going to have, even though this is the white part of the eye, if you look, it does have a shadow to it. It may not be a lot of a shadow, but I'm typically going to see a shadow on this side, and I actually curve my shadow with the curve of the eye. That helps to accentuate, again, that roundness of it. So this side is in highlight, this side is in shadow. But now I also have to think about the light coming down. Let's say that the person has darker eyes. At this point, I can do my shading technique where I go over the entire iris line. I'm going to lose some of my detail work, and that's okay because I can build it back up. I've now shaded in my eye. This is probably going to be more of a green eye or a light brown. But again, I want to make sure that I'm bringing out those shadows. So at this point, I'm going to re-establish that dark edge. I'm going to re-establish this darker edge here. I'm going to darken in my pupil even further than I had before. And now I need to look and see, again, those lines, those striations. How do they look? Are they still apparent in the eye? If so, then I want to draw them back on there. Tear ducts themselves are going to be all kinds of different shapes and formations and highlights, so you just pay attention to yours. And again, light's coming down and over, so this side of my eyelid is going to be in shadow. If you have dark skin, then just shade in the entire eyelid and then accentuate your dark areas. And then I need to remember that my light is coming down, so I know that I'm going to have a shadow up here. First off, I'm going to have a very deep shadow where the creases of my eyelid are. Then I'm going to have a concentrated shadow right there at the edge. And last, our eyebrows. I want to think about the curve of those hairs. I want to actually look for a couple key hairs and see which way that they are curving. Now, I know that I could spend more time on showing you how to do this. I know that I could show you more ways and more methods and different angles and all of that. And maybe in a future video, I will do just that. But for today, I just wanted to give you a basic kind of rundown of how to draw an eye and the other facial features as well.
Pause the video and draw 3 eyeballs.
My artist, I know that you can do this. I know that this lesson is going to be a challenge for many of you, but I know that you can do it. And the reason why I know is because if you've been following all along this whole time, you have a wealth of tools under your belt right now to help you really succeed and excel at doing this project. And just like everything else in life, this project will help you get ready for the next one. If you're a little uneasy drawing these facial features, or when we go to do the studio, you're a little uneasy with drawing faces, I want you to keep this in mind. When we do the things that we're hesitant of because we're uncomfortable doing them, because maybe we're nervous or not so sure of ourselves, that's when we truly grow. We might make mistakes, and it may not turn out right, and that's okay. The experience of having done whatever it is that you were scared of trying out before, that experience is going to help to show you how to excel in the future and how to be a better person and be a better you. Today we talked about how proportion relates to scale, how scale is our principle of design, but proportion is a subcategory of scale. We talked about how any object can be used to measure things as long as that object stays the same size. It keeps consistent. In this way, we can keep our drawings or paintings or whatever in scale. I broke down many of the features of the face, and you got a chance to experiment and draw some of those features. I discussed with you about how complex shapes can be broken down into combinations of relatively simple shapes. That everything around us can be built up of shapes, and those shapes don't have to be super confusing and complex. And last, I introduced you to the concept of foreshortening, where objects, as they move towards you and they move away from you, can be foreshortened, where the information visually is compressed. My artists, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of what you've been doing. Until next time, please remember, be kind to yourself and keep on making art. I'm Mr. Morris. Have a great day.